In the Negev Desert, 17 miles southwest of the Dead Sea, a geological formation called edh-Dhra sits at the edge of a massive sinkhole that drops 1,312 feet into darkness. Local Bedouin will not approach it after sunset. The Book of Enoch was removed from the Bible by the Council of Laodicea in 364 CE. Banned, hidden, called dangerous by the Church. When the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered in 1947 at Qumran, 11 separate copies of Enoch surfaced, more copies than most books that made it into the Old Testament. Scholars who translated the oldest fragments found something the Church never wanted in public circulation. Chapters 17 through 19 of Enoch describe a physical entrance to the abyss, a hole in the earth where fallen angels are imprisoned, and an angel named Uriel who stands guard over it. Enoch provides geographical markers. He describes what the entrance looks like. He names the being stationed there, and a location matching his description exists in the same region where the oldest Enoch manuscripts were found. In the next several minutes, you'll see what the text says, where it points, and why no archaeological team has been permitted to descend into that formation since 1924. If forbidden biblical history fascinates you, hit subscribe. Every week we uncover what was removed from Scripture. But here's what makes this stranger. The passage appears in chapters 17 through 21 of the Book of Enoch, the section scholars call the Book of the Watchers. Fragment 4Q201, stored at the Israel Museum's Shrine of the Book, contains portions of chapter 18 in Aramaic. Radiocarbon dating places the fragment at 200 BCE, making it older than any New Testament text. The complete version exists in Ge'ez manuscripts held by the Ethiopian Orthodox Church at the monastery in Aksum. Dr. Michael Knibb, who published the standard scholarly translation for Oxford in 1978, identified chapters 17 through 19 as among the oldest material in the entire Enochic tradition, predating the narrative framing chapters. These aren't additions. This is the core. Chapter 17, verses 4 through 6 describe Enoch being taken by angels to a place where heaven and earth meet. He writes that he saw a great chasm, a pit that opened into fire and darkness, extending down so far he could see no bottom. The Ge'ez word is guba, which translates as abyss, chasm, or deep pit. Chapter 18, verse 11, identifies the angel who guards it, Uriel, the same angel who later guides Enoch through the heavens. And this is where it gets disturbing. The text doesn't present this as vision or metaphor. Enoch writes in first person, past tense, using the same descriptive language he uses for observable physical locations like Mount Hermon or the valleys of the Jordan. He says he walked to the edge. He looked down. He felt wind rising from below, hot and cold in alternating blasts. He heard sounds, not metaphorical, spiritual sounds, but actual noise, which he describes as the voices of those imprisoned beneath crying out. The level of sensory detail is wrong for apocalyptic literature. Apocalyptic texts deal in symbolic beasts, cosmic thrones, numbered angels. This reads like a field report. Enoch isn't interpreting signs. He's documenting what he encountered on a journey to a specific place. What we're looking at breaks into 4 elements. The text begins with the location. Chapter 17, verse 2 says Enoch was taken to a place beyond the great darkness, past the waters to the ends of the earth. Verse 5 specifies that this place is where the foundations of heaven touch the ground, where the pillars that hold up the sky are rooted. Ancient Jewish cosmology placed the ends of the earth in the region south of the Dead Sea, the point where the known world ended and the wilderness began. Dr. Margaret Barker, former president of the Society for Old Testament Study, noted in her 2005 analysis that Enoch's geographical markers consistently point to the southeastern edge of the Judean wilderness, the transition zone between settled land and the desert abyss. But the text doesn't stop there. What follows in chapter 18 is the physical description of the entrance. Enoch writes that he came to a place of terrible fire, a region where flames rose from beneath the ground but did not consume anything. He describes seeing 7 mountains arranged in a circle, hollow in the center, with a deep pit at the center point. The mountains, he writes, are made of precious stones, not literal gemstones, but a term the edh-Dhra uses for volcanic rock, stone that forms from fire. The pit in the center releases smoke and flame. This is not symbolic language. Volcanic vents and geothermal fissures produce exactly this: rising heat, visible smoke, non-consuming flame from methane gas, and circular formations of igneous rock. What follows in verse 14 is stranger still. Enoch describes the atmosphere around the entrance. He writes that the air alternates between burning hot and freezing cold, that wind rushes up from the opening in violent bursts, and that the ground around the pit is unstable, constantly shifting. Modern geological surveys of deep sinkholes and cavern systems document these exact conditions. Temperature inversion layers create alternating hot and cold air masses. Pressure differentials between surface and subsurface chambers generate powerful updrafts. Limestone karst terrain, the geological substrate of the Dead Sea region, is structurally unstable, prone to sudden collapses and shifting ground. Enoch is describing observable geological phenomena that match a specific type of terrain. He's not mythologizing, he's reporting conditions. And then comes the part that shouldn't be possible. Chapter 20, verse 2, names the angel assigned to guard the entrance. Uriel, called the angel set over the world and over Tartarus. Tartarus is the Greek term used in the Ge'ez translation for the abyss, the prison of the damned. But the critical detail is the word set over, not rules or commands. Set over, stationed, assigned. The same term used elsewhere in Enoch to describe angels posted at specific locations for specific tasks. Uriel isn't a symbolic figure representing divine justice. He's described as a sentry, a guard on duty. Chapter 21, verse 5 adds that Uriel showed Enoch the prison of the angels, the place where they are kept in fire until Judgment Day, and that this prison is accessed through the pit Enoch saw in chapter 18. The entrance and the prison are the same location, one leads to the other. What the text reveals about this entrance goes beyond basic geography. Chapter 17, verse 6 describes Enoch feeling the temperature change as he approaches. He writes that the air became heavy and difficult to breathe, that his skin felt alternately burned and frozen, and that the ground beneath his feet trembled. These are not poetic embellishments. They're physiological responses to environmental conditions. Chapter 18, verse 12 adds that he heard the sound of rushing wind coming from the opening, so loud he could barely hear Uriel speaking beside him. The Ge'ez uses a term that translates as the roar of many waters, the same phrase used elsewhere to describe massive waterfalls or storm surges. Enoch is describing acoustic pressure from a deep shaft. But what the text adds in chapter 21, verse 3, is the visual detail most translations gloss over. Enoch writes that when he looked into the opening, he saw darkness so complete it appeared solid, like a black wall standing vertical in the pit. He says he could see flames below the darkness, red and orange, but the darkness itself blocked his view of what lay between the surface and the fire. Dr. James Vanderkam, in his 2001 commentary on Enoch for Eerdmans, noted this description matches the visual experience of looking into a deep vertical shaft where light absorption creates the illusion of a solid barrier. Enoch saw what anyone would see looking into a hole hundreds of meters deep. Nothing. Just black. But he interpreted the flames below as real, not metaphorical, because he could see them. Here's what the translators left out. The Standard English edition of Enoch, based on R.H. Charles's 1906 translation, renders chapter 21, verse 7 as, "This place is the prison of the angels, and here they will be held forever. Clean, final." But the Ge'ez manuscript in Aksum contains an additional clause that Western translations omit. Dr. Ephraim Isaac, who translated the Ethiopian text for the 1983 Oxford Annotated Bible, confirmed the clause exists, but noted it was excluded from most editions because it introduces claims of ongoing activity inconsistent with eschatological finality. The clause, translated directly, reads, "And Uriel remains, watching, until the day they are called forth." Present tense. Remains. Not remained. Not will remain, remains. The guard is still there. What modern readers don't realize is how closely this matches a known geological site. edh-Dhra, Arabic for Gate of the Arm, is a Bronze Age archaeological site 17 miles southwest of the Dead Sea. The main excavation area sits on a plateau, but the site is named for a geological feature 1 kilometer to the east, a circular depression 400 meters in diameter, surrounded by 7 raised formations of volcanic basalt, with a central sinkhole that descends vertically for over 400 meters before angling into unmapped cavern systems. Israeli geological surveys conducted in 1964 detected methane vents at the bottom of the accessible portion, producing intermittent flames visible from the surface. Temperature readings taken at 50-meter intervals showed radical fluctuations between 12 degrees Celsius and 38 degrees Celsius, within vertical distances of less than 20 meters. The formation matches Enoch's description in every observable detail. Enoch wrote this between 300 and 200 BCE. In 1924, a British expedition led by archaeologist Reverend Dr. Melvin Kyle descended 180 feet into the edh-Dhra sinkhole using rope ladders, attempting to map the lower chambers. Kyle's field journal, archived at the Albright Institute in Jerusalem, describes reaching a depth where the heat became unbearable and the air unbreathable, alternating between furnace blasts and frigid wind. The team retreated. Kyle noted hearing what he described as low vocalizations, possibly wind through rock fissures, resembling human voices in distress. He recommended further exploration with proper ventilation equipment. No follow-up expedition was ever authorized. In 1967, following the Six-Day War, the Jordanian government classified the site as a restricted natural hazard zone. Permits for descent have been denied to every research team that has applied since. The part that shouldn't be possible is this. In 2003, a ground-penetrating radar survey conducted by the Hebrew University as part of a regional geological mapping project detected a large void beneath the edh-Dhra formation. The void, centered directly below the sinkhole, measures approximately 800 meters in diameter and extends at least 600 meters deep before the radar return signal degrades. The survey was published in the journal Geomorphology, but described the void only as a significant subsurface anomaly of unknown origin. No mention was made of attempting to access it. Dr. Amos Frumkin, the lead geologist, stated in a 2006 interview that further investigation would require specialized drilling equipment and international cooperation across multiple jurisdictions. When asked if the void could be a natural cavern, Frumkin replied that its size and geometric regularity were inconsistent with typical karst formation patterns. The suppression starts at the Council of Laodicea in 364 Common Era. Church leaders removed Enoch from the biblical canon. The official reason: it contained too much material about the Watchers, the angels who fell. But Canon 60 of the Council specifically prohibits books that describe the locations of spiritual prisons or provide geography for places of divine punishment. The theology was unacceptable. The Church taught that hell, the abyss, and the prison of demons were spiritual realities, not physical locations someone could walk to. Enoch taught the opposite. He provided landmarks, directions, observable features. If the abyss has a physical entrance, then it is not a metaphor, it is a place. And places can be investigated. Jerome, compiling the Latin Vulgate around 400 Common Era, writes in his preface that Enoch foolishly claims to have visited places reserved for the final judgment. He does not specify which places. Augustine, in The City of God, argues that Enoch's geographical specificity is evidence the text is fraudulent, stating that no man can know the location of the prisons of the wicked, for they exist outside creation. But the Ethiopian church, operating independently, kept Enoch in its canon. When James Bruce brought 3 Ge'ez manuscripts to Europe in 1773, Oxford scholars who translated them called the chapters describing the abyss geographically irresponsible in a 1821 review. The phrase is revealing, not theologically irresponsible, geographically. The problem was not the claim that an abyss exists. The problem was that Enoch put it on a map. But what the standard translation hides is this. In 1952, during the early Dead Sea Scrolls excavations, archaeologist Yosef Milik discovered fragment 4 Q203 in Cave 4 at Qumran. The fragment, 14 lines of Aramaic, contains part of Enoch chapter 18. Milik's preliminary notes, published in the Revue Biblique in 1956, describe the fragment as containing a previously unknown variant reading in verse 11, specifying the angel's duty as guardian of the threshold that none may pass. Milik announced plans to publish a full translation. The translation never appeared. When scholars gained access to Milik's unpublished materials after his death in 2006, Fragment 4 Q203 was listed in the catalog but marked as missing. A photographic plate of the fragment exists in the Palestine Archaeological Museum's 1950s archive, but requests to examine the original have been denied on grounds that its current location is unknown. Now here's where it gets active. In 2014, a geological research team from Caltech applied for permits to conduct a deep cave survey of the Bab edh-Dhra sinkhole using drone-mounted LiDAR. The application was filed with the Jordanian Department of Antiquities. 6 months later, the permit was denied. The stated reason: the site poses unacceptable risk to personnel and equipment. The team lead, Dr. Sarah Lindquist, responded by offering to fund the survey entirely through private grants, with all safety liability assumed by the university. The second application was denied without explanation. Lindquist submitted a Freedom of Information request through the U.S. State Department, asking for any documentation related to the site's restricted status. The request returned a single document, a 1968 memo from the Jordanian Ministry of Interior classifying Bab edh-Dhra as a site of strategic geological concern with access restricted to authorized government personnel. No further details were provided. No authorizations have been issued. Now, let me be clear. I'm not saying there's a literal doorway to hell guarded by an angel standing watch in the Negev desert. The Book of Enoch is not a treasure map to the underworld. But what the text describes, when read carefully, matches a documented geological formation with features that should not appear together naturally. Circular arrangement of volcanic stone, central vertical shaft, extreme temperature fluctuations, methane venting, acoustic anomalies, and a subsurface void of geometrically regular dimensions extending 600 meters beneath the surface. Enoch had no tools to map underground chambers. He had no way to measure subsurface voids. He had no reason to describe a guarded entrance unless he encountered something that required a guard. And yet, the text sits there. In Aramaic and Ge'ez, in fragments found less than 30 miles from the site it describes, saying what it has said for 2,200 years. What we have to confront is the simplest explanation that fits the evidence. If a formation exists matching Enoch's description, if geological surveys confirm a massive void directly beneath it, if access has been restricted for 60 years with no public explanation, and if a text older than Christianity describes an angel stationed at that exact type of location to prevent access to what lies below, then the text is not allegory. It is documentation. Enoch went somewhere. He saw something that required a guard. He wrote it down with the same clinical precision you would use filing a site report. The being he names, Uriel, set over the abyss, watching the threshold, is either a symbol we have misunderstood for 2 millennia, or he is exactly what Enoch says, a sentry, still on duty, still stationed, still guarding an entrance that leads down to something the text calls a prison. The implications reach into everything we have been taught about the nature of spiritual reality, the geography of judgment, and what lies 400 meters beneath a restricted sinkhole in the Negev that no one has been allowed to explore since 1924. The manuscripts remain in Aksum, locked away. The fragments sit in Jerusalem, cataloged and translated. Bab edh-Dhra remains a restricted zone, 17 miles from the Dead Sea, photographed from the surface, but never fully mapped, surveyed from above, but never descended. The sinkhole is still there. The void beneath it is still there. And in a text, the church removed from the Bible, 17 centuries ago, a man named Enoch describes standing at the edge of a pit, looking down into fire and darkness, told by an angel that this is the prison of the damned and that the guard will remain until Judgment Day. The entrance is still open, the guard is still watching, and 600 meters of unmapped darkness still waits beneath the desert floor, exactly where Enoch said it would be.